Aloha and good afternoon. This is, may I call to order the House Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs, our hearing on March 17th. It is on our 2 p.m. agenda. I apologize we're starting so late. We had a very late session, and I apologize to all the testifiers who were here waiting, but we came up as quickly as we could, and I appreciate your forbearance. We are here for the purposes of hearing numerous measures, and those who are testifying today, I would request that you keep your testimony to a couple of minutes. I'll ask you to summarize when we get to that point, and I appreciate your willingness to be able to disagree without being disagreeable, and we're here to work together for the best interest of our community. If you're testifying by Zoom, maybe you could turn on the monitor so we could see you. And when you are going to testify, if you would, while you're waiting to testify, please keep your video off and your microphone muted. And then when I call your name, you could unmute yourself, turn on your camera, and give your testimony. And if you would please make sure you don't use any trademarked image or copyrighted image behind you on your Zoom background. That way we're not going to get kicked off of YouTube. So thanks for working with us on that. I think that's all I need to pass. Oh, if we get interrupted for any reason, if you lose connection, just rejoin. We'll fit you in as best we can as soon as you come back onto our stream. So let's move forward into our testimony. Today we have first up Senate Bill 47. Relating to arrangement of candidate names on ballots. First up, we have testimony with comments from the Office of Elections. Mr. Nago, thank you. And I again apologize for keeping you waiting. Please proceed.
Thank you. The office will stand on its written testimony providing comments. Basically, we're saying that we can randomize by precinct, but not within a precinct. So just keep that in mind that we don't know of any voting system that can randomize within a precinct.
If I may ask, you also have in your testimony your suggestion on what you can do with the language in the measure in terms of randomizing the first, well, you explain it.
So basically, if this bill were to pass, we would select the letter, and that would be whatever letter selected would serve as essentially letter A, and then it'll be randomized that way. So everything would be in alphabetical order pursuant to the first letter.
So, for example, you would randomize the first name, the first candidate's last name, and let's say you randomly pick the letter T. Then the names of candidates with starting T would be first, and then you would go to
T. Then it would just be in alphabetical order following T.
So U, V, W, X, Y, Z,
yeah,
and then you would go back
A.
to A and then continue that way. Okay. I just want to make sure everyone in the audience understands and everyone listening understands what you can do with the language as it's there. Okay, thanks. And we'll probably have some more questions, and I appreciate you hanging out. Next, we have testimony with comments from the League of Women Voters of Hawaii. Next, testimony in opposition from Andrew Crossland and Scott Shedko. Anyone else wishing to testify in Senate Bill 47? If not, questions, members. Vice Chair.
Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Nago, if you would, just to follow up on Chair's questions. So you said that, I understand the randomization, but would this apply to all the ballots in each precinct, or in each district, actually, right?
So what we're saying is we would randomize it, so all ballots in a precinct would look the same.
All right.
But the ballots between precincts in a district may not be in the same order. That's where it becomes random.
Okay, because I guess I'm thrown off by the language in the bill that says the names are randomized on individual ballots.
That's where we're saying that we don't know of any system that can individually random. The smallest we can go to is the precinct, not within a precinct. We can't randomize within a precinct. We can randomize by precinct, but not within a precinct.
And so maybe we should amend the bill to say that names are randomized from one precinct to another.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Certainly, thank you. Is there any other, Mr. Nago, if that amendment that the Vice Chair just proposed would suffice for you, do you have any other amendments that you need to make this so that it would actually work
I mean-
operationally?
Not to be nitpicky, but
Go be nitpicky,
if
that's what we're here
you-
for.
When you select, let's say for example, you select T, so this is a perfect example. You have Tarnis and Takayama.
Right.
Takayama would come before Tarnis, but we would say the second letter in the alphabetical order would be A, not T. So it wouldn't be Tarnis first, then Takayama.
Did you understand that?
It would only be
Try again.
alphabetized by the first letter of the name.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
oh, that's fine.
Oh,
I
okay,
understood,
yeah.
understood. You don't then go to the next letter in the
And
name.
then the
to
TT
try to-
comes first before TA.
That's, yeah, okay, I understood. So, but in terms of any amendments in the bill,
No.
the amendment that the Vice Chair had suggested, that would be sufficient?
Yes,
Okay, okay, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Nago.
thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we'll go on to the next measure. Senate Bill 51 relating to campaign finance, increasing the amount of fines that may be assessed against a non-candidate committee for violations of an organizational report requirements. First up on Senate Bill 51, we have testimony and support from the Campaign Spending Commission. Mr. Kam, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnis, Vice Chair Takayama. The Commission has submitted a brief written testimony in support of this bill, and I will just stand on that testimony for now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Next, testimony and support from the League of Women Voters. Testimony and support from Lynn Matasau, and testimony and support from Andrew Crossland. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify in this measure? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. Senate Bill 141 relating to elections. This requires presidential electors to take a pledge that they will vote for their party's nominee, and invalidates the vote of any faithless elector and removes any faithless elector from the position of elector, and provides procedures for replacing that removed elector. First up, we have testimony and support from the Commission to Promote Uniform Legislation. Peter Hamasaki, please proceed.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chair. Peter Hamasaki on behalf of the Commission to Promote Uniform Legislation. We'll stand on our written testimony in support of SB 141, which incorporates provisions of the Uniform Faithful Presidential Electors Act, and we're also available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Michael Golyuk.
Good afternoon, Michael Galoya Jr. on behalf of the Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. We stand in strong support of this bill. No one person should be able to insert their decision for the entire body of electors election. We have a hard enough time getting people to show up at the polls when they find out that one person could actually change their vote and go with somebody else that they may like over the person that actually won the presidential election in the state of Hawaii. Just is not fair and just is not right. So while we do totally support this, and we look forward to the day that we get rid of the Electoral College altogether. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, one step at a time. Okay, next we have testimony and support from the League of Women Voters of Hawaii. Janet Mason.
The League of Women Voters supports this bill. It isn't just an abstract problem. In 2016, we actually had a faithless elector in Hawaii who, and it was already against the law at that time to do this, but there was no remedy specified in the law. So that person's vote for Bernie Sanders instead of Hillary Clinton did carry. So we think, as Mr. Goliger said, it shouldn't be up to one person to elect the president and vice president of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next, we have received written testimony and support from numerous individuals, including John Bickle, Lynn Matasau, Andrew Crossland, Mike Goliot Sr., Leimomi Khan, and Scott Shedko. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on Senate Bill 141, which requires presidential electors to take a pledge they will vote for their party's nominee? Is there anyone else here? Yes, please, come on up. You didn't bother. I was trying to encourage you to come up and testify, but you've got to go. Please, thank you for stopping by.
I am in support of the public financing bill.
Okay. Thank you, Governor. Aloha. Please excuse the interruption. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
My name is Cynthia Bartlett. I just want to correct something, actually, that Representative Tarnas just,
Oh, Scott Shedko is in opposition.
oh, okay.
I was correcting my own mistake. Please
All right.
proceed.
Yes, the electorate, you just said the College of the Electorate.
I didn't say that. He said that.
He said that. Well, that is based on location. So if
Yes.
you have, say, Nevada, you have people that you don't agree with, but they have the greatest population, they will then have the most electorate. That would then be unfair. So that's why we have this system. We have this system for a reason, so that people in rural areas have equal amounts to the highly populated areas. And to just agree with that gentleman because he said that is a little shocking.
I said one step at a time.
It's a little shocking. Thank you.
And I appreciate your comments on this. Do you have any comments about the merits of the measure that we're considering today?
I support it. It's
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 141? Yes, please. Come on up, introduce yourself. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair. I didn't plan to testify on this, but I did have a question on.
And your name, sir?
My name is Adriel Lamb. I did have a question on this legislation. If Hawaii already has a bill that gives the Electoral College votes to the national popular vote, does that make, if the results were different than national popular vote, does that make this illegal? So if Hawaii voted differently than the national popular vote, are they required to give electoral votes to the national popular vote, or what Hawaii voted for? Thank you.
This purpose of the testimony is for you to provide testimony on the measure, and the measure is specifically related to requiring presidential electors to take a pledge they will vote for their party's nominee. So we can have that conversation about the Electoral College another time. It's not that purpose of this measure. So, anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 141? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, thanks. We'll move on. Appreciate the testimony. Senate Bill 182, relating to disclosures of financial interests, establishes that certain candidates shall file disclosures of financial interest no later than 10 days after the nomination filing deadline. First up on Senate Bill 182, we have testimony and support from the Hawaii State Ethics Commission, Mr. Robert Harris. Welcome. Please proceed.
Happy Aloha Friday, Chair, Vice Chair. We are in support of this measure. This is similar to a measure you've already heard previously. We consider this a housekeeping measure. It helps clean up the process by which financial disclosure statements are filed and what the enforcement mechanisms are going to be. We do see this as a fairly important housekeeping measure, so we really do appreciate any questions you might have, and hopefully this bill will move on forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Lynn Matasau, Andrew Crossland, and Will Curran. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify in Senate Bill 182? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much. Next measure, Senate Bill 197, relating to violations of campaign finance law. Increases the amount of fines from $1,000 to $5,000 that may be assessed against a non-candidate committee making only independent expenditures that has received at least one contribution of more than $10,000 or spent more than $10,000 in an election period for campaign spending law violations. First up, we have testimony and support from Judge Dan Foley, Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. Please proceed, Judge Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. The U.S. Supreme Court decision in Citizens United has created a real problem for this state and any other state in reducing the power of private money and influencing political contests and elections. This bill is an attempt to at least work against it to some degree by holding the non-candidate committees, otherwise known as super PACs, to strict compliance with our campaign spending laws and imposing significant fines for violations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in support from the Campaign Spending Commission. Mr. Kam, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama. This is a campaign spending commission's bill to increase fines against super PACs. I will note that the companion bill, HB 92, is also moving. It crossed over into the Senate. And we have some suggested amendments to page 2, lines 12 to 19. I think it makes it more clear when we separate out the fines against a committee versus a fine against a non-candidate committee. And I think that this one is in line with the intent of the Senate Judiciary Committee and their standing committee report. Other than that, I'll just stand on our written testimony. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in support from the League of Women Voters of Hawaii, Bepi Shapiro. Testimony in support from Lynn Matasau, Andrew Crossland, and Hunter Hevlin. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify in Senate Bill 197? If not, questions, members? Vice Chair? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. Next bill, Senate Bill 466, relating to campaign finance. This measure prohibits non-candidate committees from making expenditures or contributions or disseminating any advertisements on the day of any election and the 2-week period preceding an election. First up, we have testimony with comments from the Campaign Spending Commission.
Good afternoon again, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama. So we do offer a brief comment on this one. I think if this bill intends to exclude independent expenditures, then I think that should be spelled out in the bill itself to place appropriately. Does not include independent expenditures. If this bill is meant to include independent expenditures, then I think we need to have a discussion on that with the Attorney General's office. It's hard to justify regulating independent expenditures, except for, of course, the disclosure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from the Attorney General's office. Thank you very much for being here, and I appreciate your testimony. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama. The restrictions placed on the
Thank you.
The restrictions placed on the non-candidate committees proposed by this bill must survive exacting scrutiny in order to survive a First Amendment freedom of speech challenge. And two things, the law must serve an important state interest, and the law must be the least restrictive means to serve that state interest. And we do not believe that based on the comments in the resolutions, that the state interest at this point is going to be important enough to survive exacting scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in support from Lynn Matasau, Andrew Crossland, and Andrew Kajimoto. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on Senate Bill 466? If not, any questions? I have a question for the Attorney General, Ms. Park. I want to, again, express my gratitude for your late testimony in looking at this measure. I wanted to make sure I'm clear on this, that you reviewed the Standing Committee report from the Senate on this measure that laid out what they believed were the state interests that they were seeking to protect, and it was your analysis of that they did not appear to really rise to the level that they were compelling. Is that accurate? Or?
Yes, sir, that's accurate. The Supreme Court has identified at least 3 governmental interests that are considered important, and those, you are correct, do not seem to align. I'm sorry, the interests raised in the resolution do not align with the interests set forth by the United States Supreme Court.
And for everyone listening, the Attorney General reviewed the Standing Committee report which is attached to the resolution to do that analysis.
Correct.
So the language that you were looking at it's not actually in the resolution because there wasn't any description of the actual compelling state interest. So you went to the standing committee report that was attached to it too.
Correct, correct. So if you look at the bill, the purpose, the bill itself.
The resolution.
If you look at the law itself, you can have those restrictions, provided that you have the important state interest. So it was not indicated in the bill, but as you said, if you look to the standing committee report, the interests are indicated there.
Yes.
And therefore, that was the analysis.
Thank you
Yes.
very much. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, any other questions for, on Senate Bill 466? If not, we'll move on. Thank you very much. Next, we have Senate Bill 467, which proposes an amendment to Article 2 of the Constitution of the State of Hawaii, which to allow the legislature to enact laws establishing limitations on monies expended by any non-candidate committee making only independent expenditures to influence the outcome of a state election. On House Bill 467, first up, we have testimony from the Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General Candace Park. The floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you. Okay, so this bill is proposing to establish limitations on the amounts expended by any non-candidate committee making only independent expenditures. Okay, so this means they want to cap the amount that the super PAC can contribute, and this has been deemed unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court. It's black. This is black and white. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Next, we have testimony with comments from the Campaign Spending Commission. Mr. Cam?
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama. We defer to the Attorney General's opinion on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Andrew Crosslin. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on Senate Bill 467? If not, question, Vice Chair? Nope. Okay. Thank you very much to the testifiers on this, especially Attorney General, who helped to clarify these legal, very important constitutional matters. Thank you. So moving on to Senate Bill 1076 relating to elections, requires the Office of Elections to prepare a digital voter information guide and provide it provides funds and other matters related to that. Senate Bill 1076, first up, we have testimony and support from Judge Dan Foley with the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. Please proceed, Judge Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We support this bill in giving greater voter access to information on candidates and issues on the ballot, and hopefully will contribute to greater voter turnout. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony with comments from the Office of Elections.
Thank you. We'll stand on our written testimony providing comments, but would like to note that we estimate it to cost $171,248,000 to do this.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from the Disability and Communication Access Board. Testimony and support from the Community Alliance on Prisons. Ms. Kat Brady, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas and Vice Chair Takayama. I love this bill. I think it's really great, and it works in tandem with our vote-by-mail law. It's perfectly aligned with that law, and people will have the guide available as they're trying to figure out their ballot, who they're going to vote for, what the constitutional amendments are, how to vote. All of that stuff is really, really important, and to have it in one place is really terrific. So we definitely support this. We need to do whatever we can to increase our voting numbers and to actually get people to understand that the right and the responsibility to vote is something that is really crucial, because every vote is something that we all have to live under. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Janet Mason, League of Women Voters of Hawaii.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to Vice Chair Takayama. The League strongly supports this bill. It was part of the package from the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct, and the reason is that voting is the principal way that we hold our elected officials accountable for their performance, the incumbents anyway. This bill is long overdue. There are already 5 states in the western part of the United States that have been doing this for a long time, so there are models for how to implement the bill. Some people think that this bill amounts to campaigning, but that's not true. Campaigning is for an entirely different purpose. Campaigning is about promoting your particular candidate or your particular party or a particular agenda. In contrast, this bill would permit a public official, not a candidate, to provide objective information, to review and publish objective information provided by the candidate. Many states have guidelines for how to do this, and we think that'll be very helpful. We support the Office of Elections request for an appropriation of $171,000, and we hope the Attorney General gets on board and specifies how much they would need for the translation services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Bepi Shapiro. Please proceed.
I support this bill. Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas and Vice Chair Takayama. I support this bill, and I think Janet Mason has stated the reasons I support it very clearly. I have spent quite a bit of time in Oregon, where there's a wonderful voter education guide, and I know everybody relies on it. I get so many calls around elections. What is this? What should I vote? Who is this person? This would take care of all that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from several individuals, Laimomi Khan, Andrew Crossland, Kevin Mulkern, and Will Karen. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify in Senate Bill 1076? If not, Vice Chair, any questions? Okay. Let's move on to the next measure. Thank you to the testifiers. Senate Bill 1179 is next, and that's relating to campaign finance. This measure prohibits foreign nationals, foreign influenced business entities, and foreign corporations from making contributions, independent expenditures, or electioneering communications, or contributions or donations to third parties that are earmarked for such purposes. First up, we have testimony and support from the Campaign Spending Commission. Mr. Kam, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama. The Commission is in support with the intent of this bill. The Commission believes that foreigners should play no role in our elections, in state, local, or federal elections. As you know, our law is based on, or is modeled after, the federal law of the FECA. And thus far, the federal Congress has not adopted this foreign national foreign influence entity has not voted to amend FECA to include this. But this is a very good idea, and we hope that if this bill is passed, that the federal government passes a version of this bill also. I would like to point out that on page 11, line 7 of SD1, it refers to the definition of electioneering communication in section 11-341. I think that reference should be changed to 11-302, because as of January of this year, the definition of electioneering communication has been moved to 11-302.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Bepi Shapiro, League of Women Voters, Hawaii. Please proceed.
Hi, I'll stand on my written testimony on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from John Bonifaz, the organization Free Speech for People. Please proceed.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and Vice Chair, for the opportunity to testify this afternoon. My name is John Bonifaz. I'm the president of Free Speech for People. We're a national nonprofit organization dedicated to defending our democracy and our Constitution across the country. And we proudly support this bill and urge the committee to pass it. We have provided extensive written testimony. I'll just make brief remarks here. We've been working to advance this legislation across the country. Hawaii has the opportunity to become the first state in the nation to pass it. The city of Seattle has already enacted this policy as of January 2020, and it's pending before a number of other state legislatures, including California, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New York, and Washington state. For American democracy to thrive, elections should reflect the will of voters, not foreign investors. And for decades, federal law has barred foreign nationals from playing any role in our elections directly or indirectly. But the Citizens United decision opened up a loophole to that law. And now foreign investors are able to subvert that existing federal law through the corporate form by influencing the expenditure of general treasury funds. So this bill would close that loophole and would ensure that foreign influence corporations should not be engaged in influencing Hawaii elections. President Obama, right after the Citizens United ruling was issued in his State of the Union address, chastised the court for that ruling and said that it would lead to foreign influence in our elections. And Justice Alito famously broke decorum at that moment, shook his head, and mouthed the words, "That's not true." But unfortunately, President Obama's prediction has proven to be true, and this bill is so critical to ensuring that we close that loophole and end foreign influence corporate spending in our elections. Thank you for your consideration. We urge you to pass this bill.
Thank you very much. And we have received written testimony and support from Lynn Matasau, Andrew Crossland, Scott Shedko, and Jason Corta. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on Senate Bill 1179? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, thank you very much to the testifiers. We'll move on to the next measure. Senate Bill 1541, relating to voting more than once during an election. This specifies that Hawaii voters are prohibited from casting more than one ballot during an election, even if one of those ballots is cast in an election outside of Hawaii. First up, we have testimony in opposition from the Hawaii Federation of Republican Women. Jamie Detweiler, please proceed.
Aloha, Honorable Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama. We stand on our written testimony as submitted. I'd like to highlight a few points on the testimony, starting with the first point. Hawaii already has an existing law that prevents voting more than once during an election. That's referenced in HRS 19-3.5. So I won't read off the details. It's in my testimony. The second point I'd like to make is that SB 1541 is not enforceable. And I'd like to direct your attention to page 4, line 9, through page 5, line 2. It makes reference to a number of things. And I have issues with one in particular. It talks about voting was acquired with intent to make their state legal residence. So who's going to be adjudicating intent of the voter? And how will this verification be tracked and cross-checked with 49 other states and also done in a timely manner? So for those reasons, it is unenforceable. Number 3, we should shift our focus to cleaning the current voter rolls statewide. And this should be the priority. So, I'd like to make a couple other subpoints pertaining to cleaning the voter rolls. After the 2020 election, the chief election officer here in Hawaii stated that there are over 100,000 ballots impacted in a way that they belong to people who passed away, and not just recent people who have passed away, people who passed away and people who have moved. That tells me right there.
Detweiler, if you could summarize your comments on this measure itself. I appreciate your concerns about the voter rolls, but if you could summarize your final comments on this measure, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Chair. So those are my final points, and please vote no on SB 1541. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Certainly.
Mahalo.
Thank you for your testimony. Testimony and support from the League of Women Voters, Holly Plackett. Please proceed. Holly Plackett, please proceed.
Chair, apparently Holly Plackett had to.
Oh, there she is. Please proceed, Ms. Plackett.
Technical difficulties. Thank you, Chair. The League of Women Voters of Hawaii supports SB 1541. This bill is an important clarification of Hawaii's existing law with regard to voting more than once during an election. Because our current law does not expressly address the possibility that a person could cast a single vote in Hawaii and an additional vote in another state or territory in the United States, the additional language added to Section 5 makes it clear under what circumstances that situation could occur. In this day and age, when our voting rights are under scrutiny from every viewpoint, it is necessary to make these kinds of clarifications so that we cover all possible situations when it comes to voting in our elections. Voting is a basic civil right in a democracy, and we need to make our laws easy, fair, and understandable to our voting public. Thank you for the opportunity for this testimony.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in opposition from Corinne Solomon. Next, testimony in support from Lynn Matasau. And testimony in opposition from Andrew Crossland. Testimony in opposition from Tanya Victorine, Terralyn Ono, James Pirtle, Noella Vaughn, Jennifer Kabwan, Chester Lum, Maribeth Kakumu, Scott Shedko. Testimony with comments from Adriel Lamb. No. And then testimony in opposition from Michael Older. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 1541? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much to the testifiers. Next is Senate Bill 1543. Relating to public financing for candidates to elected office. This establishes a comprehensive system of public financing for all candidates seeking election to state and county public offices in the state of Hawaii to begin with the 2026 general election year. First up, we have testimony in support from Judge Dan Foley, Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. Judge Foley, you're still there?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The commission recommended increase in funding of elections, an increase in public financing, and your committee has passed that bill out. We did note, though, however, in making that recommendation, that if fiscal resources were available and the legislature had the will, we would support a more comprehensive and fully funded public financing approach, and that's what this bill does, and that's why I've submitted testimony in support of the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Judge Foley. Next, we have testimony in support from Nikos Leverins and Janet Mason from the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. Are either of you on the line? If so, please proceed.
I think we're both on the line.
You go first, Mr. Leverins. You go first.
Mahalo, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, and members. It's such a privilege to have served on the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct, and it's great to see our chair and other members here online and in person. We're now having the sort of enlightened discussion and purposeful movement for more far-reaching reforms that I alluded to with my Governor Ariyoshi quote in my personal testimony. The UHERO report on public financing found that most scholarship shows that generous public financing programs increase electoral competition, contribute to greater diversity among candidates and donors, and encourage more contact between office seekers and voters. As I also noted, and Janet and I have also noted, recent experiences with the Hawaii County Council elections in 2010 and 2012 indicate implementation of a fully financed program can be successful with adequate funding. And I'll close with a statement from Common Cause National from Heather Ferguson. She said that SB 1543 is the most significant and extensive public financing bill currently under consideration in the nation. Should this bill become law, Hawaii will be an exemplar of what building a more inclusive and representative democracy looks like. Mahalo for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Certainly, thanks very much. Next, Janet Mason, if you'd like to provide testimony, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I submitted personal testimony regarding this bill. And really, to me, a very good reason to do it, a good public policy rationale, is it's an equal opportunity kind of bill. This is a principle that's well established in Hawaii. We shouldn't have to be independently wealthy to run for office. This bill will especially help first-time candidates and give everyone a chance. If they are interested in serving the state in an elected capacity, money shouldn't be an obstacle. Thanks for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, and thanks to Judge Foley, Nikos Leverens, and Janet Mason, and anyone else who's here or online who have testified, who participated in the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. I appreciate your hard work in that organization and that effort. Okay, next we have testimony and support from the Campaign Spending Commission. Mr. Kam, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama. I just wanted to make clear that we have in existence a partial public financing plan, funding program, and that program exists because of the Constitution of the state of Hawaii. So whether or not this bill passed, we're still going to have to run the partial public financing program, and the bill that Judge Foley referred to that was passed out is our attempt to raise the maximum amount available in that partial public financing program. Other than that, I'll just stand on written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from the League of Women Voters of Hawaii. Bepi Shapiro, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama. I'm so happy to be testifying on this bill. This is a very important bill, and there are many advocates who've been working for it for a long time. Some of the reasons include, as Janet Mason alluded to, allowing candidates who don't have personal or family wealth or wealthy friends to have a chance of breaking into the ranks of legislators who make these important decisions for our community. And the other advantage is that, as Maine and Connecticut have found, enacting full public financing allows a more diverse group of candidates to be fielded, and in many cases in those two states to be elected. So I think we could look forward to that opportunity as well. When we think about why we're trying to avoid having most of our candidates have to rely on personal wealth or family or wealthy friends, we must be aware, as I pointed out in my testimony, that people who and businesses who have money actually have different political preferences from people who have less. So it's important to hear from both, from the people who feel one way and the people who fear another way. The other thing I really want to emphasize is that the cost of this measure would not be extreme. Both Connecticut and Massachusetts have expended quite reasonable amounts. I have a chart for that I can provide to the committee if you're interested. And looking at past expenditures for these offices in Hawaii, the amount to be expended is not a significant part of the general funds, for especially when considering the enormous benefit it would have in a symbolic as well as an actual on the ground impact. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Maki Morinoi. Next, we have testimony and support from Robert Culbertson, and testimony and support from Evan Weber. Welcome. You're in person. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Aloha and mahalo, Chair Tarnas and Vice Chair Takayama, for the opportunity to speak, but also for hearing this important legislation. My name is Evan Weber. I'm one of the co-founders of Our Hawaii, and I'm speaking today on behalf of our thousands of members and supporters who are really concerned about the issue of money in politics and the way that it impacts the political decisions and the legislation that moves forward and doesn't. And they're not alone. Last year, we ran a poll that showed that government corruption and the influence of money in politics was the number 3 top issue for Hawaii voters across the political spectrum. And that was only behind the affordable housing crisis and inflation, which we can understand why those would be top concerns for voters at this point in time. So SB 1543, we believe, would really go as far as constitutionally possible towards taking a major step to reducing that by providing an alternative to our current campaign finance system for candidates, and it has all the other benefits that people before me have described. The thing that I just want to say in my testimony today is, yes, this is important to Hawaii voters, but this is also an important opportunity for you all as legislators. As Senator Rhodes put it last week in his public comments at the Civil Beat event that you were at, Chair Tarnas, how nice would it be to not have to look over your shoulder at donors all the time and just be able to focus on voters and what constituents want. And voters will reward you with that. Even just supporting this bill, voters will reward you. Our polling also showed that candidates would favor a politician who supported this policy to publicly finance elections and remove the influence of private donations by 74%, and that is across the political spectrum as well. So that's the end of my comments, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Next, we have testimony and support from Kristen Alice, Hope Services Hawaii. Please proceed.
Aloha, my name is Kristen Alice, and I'm here on behalf of Hope Services Hawaii. We're the largest homeless services provider on Hawaii Island, and we achieve above average results in helping people get housed and stay housed. But the status quo is not something that we can control, and with all due respect, the housing crisis and the homelessness situation has been created by the government. I want to share a couple of things that are quite striking about the status quo. So in the United States, Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders are 39 times more likely to experience homelessness than Asians, and they're 14 times more likely to experience homelessness than whites. This isn't the result of outsiders flying to Hawaii to become homeless, and it's not the result of a lot of other myths about people becoming homeless as a result of something that they did. One other statistic that is quite shocking: in Hawaii County, 28% of people experiencing homelessness are children. These people didn't ask to be homeless. It's not the result of a failure to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. It's the result of government policy that doesn't prioritize the well-being of its people. Now, the policies that some lawmakers make, they can often be predicted by looking at their campaign contributions. And if there's campaign contributions, major contributors are out-of-state real estate developers, real estate investment trusts, the tourism industry, and other groups that profit off of the backs of local people by pushing people out and by taking that land and pushing them into homelessness, then that's where the problem is created. We have the opportunity today, though, to change that and to make sure that leaders who come from communities across Hawaii, no matter if they're born into wealth or not, have the opportunity to serve their people and create better policies. And you have the opportunity to not have to spend time fundraising and instead to be engaged with the community. Lastly, I'd like to share a quote from somebody like you who was elected to public office via campaign public financing. Her name is Representative Umberine Rana, and she is from Maine. And I asked her about her experience with public campaign financing. She said, "I was publicly financed, and it was the only way it was possible for me to run as a working class person. It goes a long way in removing barriers that allow young people to run for office and people of color. As a 28-year-old first-generation American, this made it possible for me." Please, let's make it possible for more people like Umberine in Hawaii to serve their communities. And I've attached some more data showing the rates of homelessness, if you'd like to see it in our testimony. Mahalo for hearing this bill, and mahalo for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. And I want to assure you, we do have your written testimony, and I circulated it to all members in the committee yesterday afternoon when it was also released to the public. So thank you for providing that information. Next, we have testimony in support from David McCluskey, former Deputy Speaker of the Connecticut House of Representatives. Please proceed, Mr. McCluskey.
Good evening from West Hartford, Connecticut. I submitted written testimony on this bill. Just in summary, I would say I was on the governor's campaign finance working group, and it wasn't an easy task to craft a bill that would pass. But I will tell you that since the passage of the bill, the vast majority of candidates in Connecticut are running on the public financing system. It's not perfect. It has been modified, and there are efforts sometimes to strengthen it and also to weaken it. But I think it has really changed the perception, but the perception because of the you're focusing on getting local donations, and with online donating, it's very quick and easy to get contributions, and it does reduce the influence of big money in deliberations at the state capitol. I'm still involved in politics. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Appreciate you testifying today. Next, moving on, we have testimony and support from Joshua Wish, Holomua Collaborative. Mr. Wish. Oh, thank you. You know the routine.
Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Holomua Collaborative will stand on its testimony and support. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from the Hawaii Workers Center, Sergio Alcubilla.
Oh, shit.
Please proceed, sir.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas and Vice Chair Takayama and Representative Ganadin. Thank you very much for this opportunity to testify in support of this bill. My name is Sergio Alcubilla. I am the Executive Director for the Hawaii Workers Center. This bill is important for us because it helps level the playing field for Hawaii's working class communities. So many times their voices are drowned out by larger corporate interests, with big donors. And this helps level the playing field in the political arena for a lot of the communities that we serve. Chair Tarnas and Vice Chair Takayama, thank you again for this opportunity to testify in support of this bill, and I hope you consider it seriously. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I'm going to move on to others who have noted they're able to be either be on Zoom or in person. We've received lots of written testimony, but those who have said they're going to be here by Zoom or in person include the next one, Kathleen Lee, in support. Please proceed. Kathleen Lee, please proceed. Yes, I hear your voice. Please proceed.
Thank you. Yes, I have been in politics for a long time, and I'm born in Hawaii, and I've seen the changes with big money. And I've also been on the inside as a delegate in political parties here in Hawaii. And what I saw is a demonstration of the actual involvement of so many people, because they get so upset when they end up working so hard on things, and then all of a sudden the powerhouse of the union comes in and changes everything. It's like, you really almost worry about that you're just going to give up, but we can't. And I have 19 pages of the contributions to our current governor. I also have seen our Attorney General. I can tell you that with that kind of powerhouse behind these people, it would be so hard for anybody else to win. It would be impossible. I can file that as an exhibit to my testimony, 19 pages, and a lot of the donations are right at the top, 6,000, and they came from, you name it, huge corporations, pharma, health management organizations. It just really makes it so hard to have faith that we could ever have an election that would be truly of the individual. I thank you very much for hearing me, and Mr. Tornes, I know that you've done some incredible things, and with our children here in North Kohala, I admire you so much, and I really appeal to your sense of Christ within, that you care about the individual and you care about people wanting to be involved in government, and they will be involved in government with public funding. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank you very much, April. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. I appreciate your testimony. I miss Kohala, so it's nice to hear from someone from Kohala. Okay, moving on. We've already heard from Mr. Leverins. And next, we have testimony from Jordan Hawker in support. Please proceed. Not here. Next, we have testimony in support from Colin Moore. Boy, you're famous. Please proceed.
Aloha, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama. Thanks so much. As was earlier mentioned, I wrote the HERO report on public financing, which takes a really deep dive into the political science research on this. There's been about 30 years of really extensive research on public financing programs in Arizona, Maine, and Connecticut. Our model, or at least the model proposed here in SB 1543, follows those models, particularly Connecticut, which has been the most successful. I just want to highlight 3 things that these programs tend to do, or the research shows they do. The first is they do increase electoral competition and lead to more candidates running for office. Because there's more attention paid to these down-ticket races, it tends to reduce ballot roll-off, which is the likelihood of voters to stop voting when they get farther down the ballot. So there's more participation down ballot. They've been shown to increase the diversity of candidates running for office. In Arizona, for example, far more Native American and Latino candidates ran after the program. And then, of course, it eliminates the need to raise money privately. This may make candidates less beholden to donors, but one thing I really did want to emphasize as well is that it gives candidates more time to spend with voters. And studies in Maine showed that when they were freed from the time commitments necessary to raise private funds, candidates spent a lot more time attending community events, connecting with voters, and that, of course, is a real positive thing for citizens and for candidates. And I know that cost is a concern, and there have been various estimates. I think even if we assume a very high level of participation, we're talking maybe $10 million a year, but it's probably going to be lower than that. In Connecticut, for example, a much larger state, spent about $13.5 million in the 2020 election, which seems like a very manageable amount of money. So thank you so much for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your work on that UHERO report. Very helpful. If I could ask Mr. Leverins to mute your microphone, that'd be great. Next, we have testimony and support from Keani Rollins Fernandez. Next, testimony and support from Nate Hicks. Welcome, Mr. Hicks. Please proceed.
Thanks for having me. Nate Hicks. Appreciate the opportunity, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Stand on my testimony and support, but also want to point out how important money is into our elections. Providing people the opportunity to raise enough funds is important because 91% of those who spend more money than their candidate, than their opponent, win their elections. Money is a crucial part of who gets to become an elected official. For House races, over the last several elections, the winner in a House race, in a 2-person race, spends on the average about $40,000, while the loser spends $16,000. This vast discrepancy can be closed by the merits of this bill. This would help allow those challengers to actually have enough money to race. And the concentration of the donations is very concentrated. Over half of the money donated to candidates in the last election cycle came from less than 1,000 donors. That is a significant consolidation of campaign donations, and this program can help diversify the amount of money coming from a large group of folks. And again, I wanted to echo all the thoughts that came from the previous advocates, and also say that this cost could be paid for by $1 for every visitor that visits the island. That's how inexpensive the cost of this program could be. I appreciate the opportunity to testify and really hope and excited that this bill can pass. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on this? Please come on up, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, distinguished representatives. My name is Cameron Hurt. I'm a political scientist by education. I also serve on the Macaulay Mo'ili Neighborhood Board, but today I'm here in the capacity as a private citizen. I am up here today to urge the legislatures that this bill should be supported, fully funded, and codified by the state legislature. At a time when trust in elected officials is at an all-time low nationwide, it is imperative that elected leaders work to restore trust in city, county, state leadership. Transparency is key to regaining that trust, and we know that money oftentimes clouds judgment, clouds will, and clouds the voice of the people, or, for lack of better words, drowns it out completely. We've seen established successes with bills like this, in some or another in some and another forms, including on Hawaii Island, in the states of Colorado, Connecticut, Florida, Maryland, Michigan, North Carolina, New Mexico, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington State, West Virginia, and Massachusetts. All of these states have some element of public financing. What Hawaii has a chance to do here is be on the forefront of the nation, to truly do something for the people, by the people, of the people, to form that more perfect union that we are always striving for. This eliminates the need to have to come from a wealthy family. This gives the kid who went to Kalakaua the same chances as the kid who went to Punahou. This right here also gives the chance. The bill is advantageous in part because it stands to help increase the participation in the election process of Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander groups, who we all here, be us Pacific Islander or not, be us Native Hawaiian or not, owe a great deal to morally, and that we must stand when we can to support and make sure that we are able to lift up the most disenfranchised in our community. A democracy is only as strong as its most disenfranchised community. We have a chance to be a symbol of strength for the American people nationwide, and to reinsert ourselves as an island that is truly for our people in the most democratic way. Again, I urge you all to vote yes on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hurt. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on this measure? Anyone on Zoom? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, this, I really appreciate everyone's advocacy. This was a major effort to not only write this bill, introduce the bill. I appreciate the members in the House that have allowed me to schedule this and move it forward, recommend that it move forward. But we read lots of your testimony, and with Professor Moore's report, we learned a lot about other places as well. So the lack of questions is not because of lack of interest, but we've learned a lot. So I appreciate that. We have received, in addition to those who have already spoken, 133 additional testifiers in support, and 2 with comments and 1 in opposition. So that's what we have. Again, any questions, members? If not, thanks very much. I think we will move on. Ms. Park. I guess you didn't want to speak on this one. Okay, if there's no questions, then we'll move on to the next measure. Thanks very much. Next, we have Senate Bill 627 relating to campaign finance. This measure allows candidates to seek, allows candidates seeking election to use campaign funds for child care and vital household dependent care costs under certain conditions. First up, I'm getting there. Here it is. Okay, first up, we have testimony from Mr. Gary Kam, Campaign Spending Commission in support. Please proceed, Mr. Kam.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. We submitted brief testimony in support of this measure, and I will just stand on the written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have testimony in support from Louisa Duggan, Vote Mama Foundation. Please proceed.
Yes, thank you. My name is Louisa Dugan, and I'm submitting
testimony. Sorry, I mispronounced your name. Lisa Dugan. Okay. Louisa Dugan.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm submitting testimony on behalf of Vote Mama Foundation in strong support of Senate Bill 627. It is an honor and privilege to be speaking before you today on a piece of legislation that would benefit everyday caregivers throughout my home state. Childcare obligations are one of the major factors families consider when weighing their decision to run for office. In many states, it costs more to send an infant to childcare than a mortgage payment. This is not an expense working families can take on, especially when campaigning for public office. By passing Senate Bill 627 into law, the Hawaii State Legislature has the opportunity to strengthen access to democracy for everyday parents and caregivers, addressing the structural barriers like the cost of childcare that prohibit working parents from running for and serving in public office furthers our notions of good governance and equality. This legislation would advance public trust in how candidates can and do use their campaign funds on expenses directly related to campaign activities. In 2018, the Federal Election Commission approved federal candidates' option to spend campaign funds on childcare through a unanimous bipartisan vote. However, this ruling does not apply to state and local candidates. Vote Mama Foundation is working to approve the use of campaign funds for dependent care by state and local candidates in all 50 states. As of today, 28 states, both Democratic and Republican, have brought their state statutes in line with federal regulations. States like Colorado, Illinois, Vermont, and Washington all allow for candidates to use their campaign dollars on expanded caregiver expenses to include those for any dependent, just as this bill does. This is a bipartisan initiative for moms and dads alike. As with any other campaign finance allowance, this bill creates an option for use and is not a mandate. If candidates do not want to use their campaign funds on caregiving expenses, they do not have to. Even better, this common sense solution is at no cost to taxpayers. Strengthening access to democracy and making democratic systems more available to all Hawaii residents is a cornerstone of this legislature's values and ideals. I urge the House Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs Committee to support Senate Bill 627 and vote it out of committee. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in support from AAUW of Hawaii, Yongi Overly. Testimony in support from Hawaii Children's Action Network Speaks. Testimony in support from Hawaii State Democratic Women's Caucus. And testimony in support from Will Karen and Scott Shedko. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 627? If not, questions, members? I just want to make it clear, Mr. Cam, you there? I just want to make it clear, your testimony saying that this would allow candidates to use campaign funds to pay for the cost of childcare or vital household dependent care where the care is needed because of the candidate's participation in campaign activity. Could you explain your next sentence there, that you note that the payment for care could also be considered as being directly related to the candidate's campaign? What are you, you pointed that out. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, well, very simply, if a candidate needs a child care or dependent care services in order to participate in campaign-related activities like a fundraiser, then the commission views that as being directly related to the campaign. That's been our testimony for the past 3 years now. I forget how many years this bill has come up, but I think the sponsors want something more permanent.
So are you saying that we don't currently, we wouldn't need this measure in order for candidates to be able to spend campaign funds on childcare or dependent care?
Well, what I'm saying is that it is staff's opinion that the commission will find under these circumstances that this is directly related to the candidate's campaign and thus allowable.
Okay.
I'm not going to be around forever, right?
Okay, all right. No, I'm not asking you to be around forever, but I appreciate that. So if a current candidate were to include payment for care in their expenditure reports, that to date the commission has allowed that, but this measure would actually put it into statute so it's clear. Is that that's my understanding of what you're testifying. Is that accurate?
Well, it's accurate that if someone did report an expenditure like this, and if it was to attend a campaign event, then that is not something that I would flag. But if what appears is going on is that someone is just filing expenditures, which looks like just your monthly child care kind of bills, and we might look into that because not all of it, I don't think can be argued that is for campaign related.
Okay, what if they're out canvassing all the time and they can't take care of their kid or their adult that needs care? I mean, would that?
Again, if it's directly related like that, then that would be allowable. At least I wouldn't try it.
Okay, all right. That's just helpful for me to understand. Representative Ganadin?
Mr. Cambier, do you have any experience canvassing for public office?
No, come on.
All right.
Me?
I'm trying to clarify that. Does the commission understand that canvassing for public office, like, do you understand that the hours that candidates usually do that, especially at our level, at the state, House, Representative, Senate level, and for
So what's your question?
Yeah.
Ask your question.
Do you realize that the hours that usually do that are maybe around 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., kind of when most people need childcare?
No, I have no personal knowledge about that. One of our commissioners was involved in a campaign, but I have no personal knowledge. It sounds reasonable.
All right, so that is also the time when it could look like you're out doing another job or something like that. if someone was asking for childcare between the hours of, let's say, 2:30 to 6:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then most of the day Saturday, would that be flagged by you without passage of this law?
I would probably flag it, and with the passage of this law, I would also probably flag it just to make sure that all of those repeated instances were for campaign related events.
Why would you call them repeated instances if they're, say, between the months of January to November in a campaign year?
Well, I would, because I have no personal knowledge, and if this kind of schedule is common, and we get to learn that it is common, then I might not look into it. But until we start establishing some baselines,
so is that
we will look into
baseline
it.
based on your personal experience?
Well, we try to administer a statute which requires the use of campaign funds for only certain reasons, one being campaigning. And if someone is needing childcare or else the person can't campaign, then in my mind, that is campaign related.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? Representative Kong.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Cam, quick question. Should the bill preceding this one pass and we are publicly funded to, I guess, run for office, then can someone not just say, use this funds for their own benefit in a sense and say they're campaigning? Because there's no proof, right, that they're not out there campaigning.
Well, under our law, anytime you report an expense or contribution, the candidate, non-candidate committee have to keep records of that transaction for up to 5 years after you report in which these expenditures or donations, contributions are reported. So records have to be kept.
Yeah, so
for example, in this particular situation, hours are going to have to be proved that it was spent campaigning. And then, of course, then the invoice or receipts for the child care or dependent care, that kind of records.
So in a sense, it'd be actually a good thing because then you'd have everybody running and using those campaign funds, whether they win or lose, to cover their child care or dependent care.
If they're campaigning.
Yeah, of course.
Do you have any further questions?
Yeah, I don't know if I understand if that was a question for me or.
It was a comment, I think. But did you have any other question, Mr.
No,
Representative
Chair, I
Kong?
will go with that. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Any other questions on this measure? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thanks so much to the testifiers. Next, Senate Bill 9, relating to boards of registration, requires members of each board of registration be a registered voter in the respective county of the board to which the member is appointed and remain a registered voter in that county for their term of office. And it establishes a method for determining and verifying a board member's political membership. First up, we have testimony and support from the League of Women Voters of Hawaii. Janet Mason.
Thank you, Chair. The League supports this bill. The registrars in the counties are volunteers. They have a very important role to play in helping maintain the integrity of the voter registration records. If they are familiar with the people, they reside in the county, they're familiar with the residents, they're familiar with the operation of the county clerk's office, and they're familiar with political parties that are active in the county, it just stands to reason that that would give them additional insight into any appeals that come from voters or any decisions that arise from the clerk's decisions. So we support the bill. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Leimomi Khan. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thanks very much. We have Senate Bill 19, relating to cast ballots. This measure guarantees the vote of eligible voters who cast their ballot and then subsequently die or otherwise become ineligible before Election Day. First up, we have testimony in opposition from Jamie Detweiler, Hawaii Federation of Republican Women, and testimony in support from Holly Plackett, League of Women Voters. Next, we have testimony in opposition from Corin Solomon. Testimony in opposition from Adriel Lamb. Sir, thanks for your patience. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair and committee members for the opportunity to testify. I'm in opposition to this legislation. It's actually a failure of elections by mail to cover a loophole. And there's no way that a cast ballot, if an ineligible voter or if a voter becomes ineligible before Election Day, that can be reversed. And it increases the distrust of our election systems. We have higher costs for elections by mail, going from 6 to 8 million, and it's going to grow more because you got to have more electronic systems to run this voting system, and we have even lower participation from year to year. There's a lack of trust in here, but you can increase trust by doing in-person voting, paper ballots, and hand counting on Election Day. We have an example of a system that counts 14 million votes in one day within 6 hours, paper ballots hand counted with sufficient volunteers. You can do that in Hawaii, 3,000 to 4,000 volunteers, 12 to 15 people per precinct, under $5 million for that. We can increase the trust of people by getting rid of elections by mail in this 5-year review period that we have. I can give you an example that I was a candidate 2022, primary candidate. 2 weeks before the elections, unfortunately, my aunt passed away. She was 97. We had her ballot. It could have been cast, and nothing would have been done to check if that was eligible or not. This system only codifies into the law that everyone knows is wrong. And if you pass this legislation, there's even more distrust on how our ballots are cast. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in opposition from Keisha Matu Peahu. And then we've received testimony in writing in opposition from numerous individuals: Andrew Crossland, Tanya Victorine, Jennifer Capuan, Noella Vaughn, Chester Lum, Scott Shedko, Randon Welch, and Charlene Mata. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify in Senate Bill 19? If not, questions, members?
Chair?
Oh, yes. Please proceed, Mr. Goliot.
Hi, yes. Michael Goloyu, Chair of the Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. We stand in strong support of this bill. When a ballot's been cast, it should be counted. And if somebody dies between that period of them casting their ballot and then ballot being counted, doesn't matter. Their ballot should be cast because they were eligible to vote at the time that they placed that ballot into the ballot box, put it in the mailbox, or one of the many drop boxes. We have seen huge increase when it came to voting by mail in 2020. We saw historic numbers. Unfortunately, those numbers didn't keep up in 2022, but they were higher than in previous years when in-person voting, when the majority was in-person voting. So the caucus supports mail-in voting. We support this. Thank you. We encourage you to pass the bill out. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 19? If not, questions, members? I have one question, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Deputy Attorney General Park, but I was going to ask this question of Mr. Nago, but he's left. And what I'm curious about is you've heard Mr. Goliot and what he's described, where somebody cast their ballot, put it into the mail or put it into the drop box, and then they pass away, they die between that time and the election day. Under current law, is that ballot valid?
I'm sorry, Representative Tarnas,
You can't answer that question.
I can't answer that question.
I appreciate it. Attorneys, it's good if you're an attorney and if you don't know the answer, you say you can't answer that question. That's a good thing to say, so I appreciate that. And
However, if that's a question you want us to look at, we can do that.
Well, if this committee decides to move it out, I would defect it so that it's not just going to go straight up, because I want that answered. And I was going to then, if you're not able to answer it, I was going to ask the other smart attorney over here, Mr. Harris or Mr. Wish, if you, okay, all right. Neither of them are, because I think this is something that I'd like to really understand. I want to honor the concerns that were brought up. And there's obviously different opinions about this. I have my own sense of that, but who am I? Right? So I want to find out from the government attorneys. Okay. Well, thanks for trying, and we'll take that copy back if you're You give it to Keone. Thank you. But if you could, yes, go back and take a look at the bill, take a look at the statute, and see if you could answer that question. That'd be great. Thank you very much, Ms. Park. Any other questions on this measure?
Let it go.
Nope. Okay, let's move on. Thanks very much. Next, we have Senate Bill 201 relating to contributions by state and county contractors and grantees of the state. This extends the ban on campaign contributions from state and county contractors to grantees of the state under Chapter 42F, Hawaii Revised Statutes, and to the owners, officers, and immediate families of the government contractor or state grantee. First up, testimony in support from Judge Dan Foley, Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. Please proceed, Judge Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your committee deferred a similar bill and deferred it for an appropriate reason, that it was too broad, that the ban also included employees. This bill does not include employees, so hopefully addresses the legitimate concern of your committee. And passage of this bill by the legislature would go a long way in alleviating concerns of the public of the so-called pay-to-play in politics. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony support from the Campaign Spending Commission. Mr. Gary Kam, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. Just to update my written testimony, or Commission's written testimony, HB 724, which is the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct version of this bill, was heard today and passed out by the Judiciary Committee in the Senate. I'll stand on the rest of my written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in support from Lynn Matasau, Andrew Crossland, Will Karen, and Nanea Lowe. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on Senate Bill 201? Please, come on up, introduce yourself, and please proceed.
Yeah, sorry. Evan Weber, Hawaii, didn't get my written testimony in, but did want to say strong support of this bill. This is a real and major loophole in our current law. Hawaii did a report last year looking at this issue in Maui County specifically, and we found that directors, officers, owners, decision makers at companies were majorly exploiting the loophole. In total, between the 2021 and 2022 cycles, we identified 17 companies who were awarded contracts, and that group of people that this law would sort of account for made donations totaling about $100,000, and in turn received $55 million in contracts, which is about a 550% return on investment, which is pretty good. And there were a few companies that really stuck out where it was very clear that there was kind of a pay-to-play thing happening, where they were donating to both mayoral candidates in the last mayoral election, as well as many or most of the council candidates who their projects were being overseen for. So that was just looking at Maui County. I'm sure that it's happening in other counties as well, and just strongly encourage the state to take action to correct this loophole and oversight in previous law.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? And just to inform the members, Mr. Kam mentioned House Bill 724 was moved out by the Senate committee. It was moved out by the Senate committee with amendments, curiously, that said that this is not going to apply to, in the case of someone who is having partial public financing. And the concern expressed by the Senate senator who advocated for that was that she was concerned that there are so many employees of state contractors that it would be very difficult to enforce. This HB 724 did not include employees of contractors, so I was confused by why that was an issue. So anyway, the Senate did move out HB 724 with that amendment, so keep that in mind as we go into decision making. Okay, if there's no other questions on this, let's move on to Senate Bill 109 relating to gender-neutral terminology. This replaces gender-specific terminology used in adoption and divorce matters with gender-neutral terminology. And on this measure, we have testimony with comments from the Department of Human Services, State of Hawaii, testimony and support from Michael Goliot. Please proceed.
Good afternoon again. Michael Gloy Jr., Chair of the Stonewall Caucus. We stand in strong support of this measure. We are going to ask that this testimony count for the next bill as well, because the subject matter is basically the same. With regards to this body has already deemed that there is a third gender. That's why we extended gender markers on our state IDs and driver's licenses. We need to go to gender neutral language when it comes to our court documents as well, to ensure that everybody is included and everybody has a place at the table and everybody has a right to be able to move forward in a legal manner that reflects their gender. So we ask that these gender neutral languages move forward. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Next, we received testimony and support from Mike Goliot Sr., Leimomi Khan, testimony in opposition from Victor Ramos, testimony and support from Dana Keave, testimony in opposition from Dara Yatsushiro, testimony and support from Thaddeus Pham, Abby Simmons, Danielle Sato, Brianna Zoe, Danielle Bergen, Alec Marentic, Madeline Sesapasara, Andrew Kagimoto, and Nikki Ann Yee. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in Senate Bill 109? Yes, please come on up. Introduce yourself. Please proceed. Thank you.
Cynthia Bartlett. In this age of postmodernism, the meaning of words is often a tool for cultural or political intent. And there's a big movement from the federal side and from the activist groups here in Hawaii to do this general neutral thing.
Are you in support or opposition?
I'm in opposition.
Okay.
And so, as we say in the world of advertising, which I come from, if you say a slogan often enough, it does become the truth in the public town hall. There is a fallacy repeated over and over again in this session in Hawaii, in many, many of the bills, that being kind or inclusive or progressive means using gender-neutral terms, and that's simply not true. You have to consider the issue of compelled speech. We're having this issue in the schools right now. Compelled speech counts on paper too, and it counts in legal ways. I am not a cis woman. You're not a cis man, and just because there is a third gender does not nullify the fact that we have biological male and female, and to move this gender neutral agenda forward is simply complying with the political small group of people who are very loud.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in Senate Bill 109? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you to the testifiers. Final bill on our agenda, Senate Bill 110. This bill relating to gender-neutral terminology requires gender-specific terminology used in adoption and divorce matters to be construed in a gender-neutral manner. First up, we have testimony with comments from the Department of Human Services. Next, we've already heard testimony support from Michael Goliot with the Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. And we have testimony in writing and support from Mike Goliot Sr. with Rainbow Family 808. And we have testimony in opposition from Cynthia Bartlett. Do you want to? Yeah, please proceed.
Again, this is an issue of common sense in legal terms. And also, we have to consider discrimination when we start to refer to humans as cis this and cis that, and I'm not allowed to call myself a woman, but I have to say I'm a pregnant person. This is a road that there's no brakes on. And so it begins with the gender neutral, and it comes under the Trojan horse disguise of being kindly or being inclusive, and it's actually not. It's compelled speech and compelled writing, and it's not legal.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in support from Leimomi Khan, testimony in opposition from Victor Ramos, testimony in support from Dana Keave, testimony in opposition from Dara Yatsushiro, and testimony in support from numerous individuals, including Thaddeus Pham, Abby Simmons, Danielle Sato, Brianna Zoe, Madeline Sessa Pasara, Andrew Kagimoto, and Nikki Ann Yee. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify in Senate Bill 110? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, thank you very much to all the testifiers. We're going to call for a brief recess while we assemble members to vote. Brief recess. Reconvening our hearing of the Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs for decision-making on our 2 p.m. agenda here Friday, March 17th, 2023 in Conference Room 325. Thank you to all the members for being here for decision-making. I'd like to move forward. First off on the agenda, Senate Bill 47. I recommend we move out House Draft 1 in order to address or to accomplish what the Office of Elections has described in their testimony. I would like to put into the measure that we require the names to be placed on the ballot in a randomized order to the greatest extent possible. The reason why I'm doing that is so that, and the language is for that reason, just in case technology allows for greater randomization in the future, we wouldn't have to change the law. So that way, I think we can meet the needs of the Office of Elections, but also be flexible in case technology is improved in the future. So with that, I'd like to move it forward as my recommendation for House Draft 1. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 47 with amendments, Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Ganadin.
Aye.
Representative Holt. Excused. Representative Hashimoto excused. Representative Ichiyama.
Aye.
Representative Villagon excused. Representative Kong.
Aye.
Representative Mizuno.
Aye.
Representative Souza.
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next on Senate Bill 51, I would like to do a House Draft 1 on this as well, make some technical amendments, and I want to keep track of this one, and it's going to Finance next, and so I'm going to put a defective effective date on it. So tech amendments, defective effective date, June 30th, 3000. That's my recommendation for an HD1. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 51 SD1 with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representative Holt, Hashimoto, and Iligan for the remainder of this agenda. Any WRs or noes? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. On Senate Bill 141, relating to elections, my recommendation is to pass out an amended version, HD1, with technical amendments and defect the effective date. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote, and the defective effective date would be June 30th, 3000. Any questions or concerns? Not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 141 SD1 with amendments. Any WRs or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. On the next measure, Senate Bill 182, relating to disclosures of financial interest, my recommendation is to pass out a House Draft 1, defecting the effective date to June 30th, 3000. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 182 SD1 with amendments. Any WRs or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next measure, Senate Bill 197. I would like to pass out an amended version, so it would be a House Draft 1, and I would like to adopt the Campaign Spending Commission amendments that they have offered in their testimony and defect the effective date to June 30th, 3000. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 197 SD1 with amendments. Any WRs or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next bill, Senate Bill 466, based on the Attorney General's analysis and opinion that this would not stand up to a constitutional challenge, I recommend we defer this. Next measure, Senate Bill 467, based on the recommendation of the Attorney General that this measure would not pass, would not survive a challenge because of constitutional concerns. My recommendation is that we defer this measure. Next, Senate Bill 1076. My recommendation is to move out a House Draft 1 on page 3, line 7, replace the word drop box with the word place of deposit, since that is a defined term. And then I would like to put in the Standing Committee report that the appropriation request is $171,248. I'll keep the defective effective date. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 1076 SD2 with amendments. Any WRs or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. On the next measure, Senate Bill 1179. On this measure, I'd like to recommend we move out a House Draft 1. It would include the Campaign Spending Commission recommended amendment in their testimony. In addition, I'd like to make some additional changes to make it much clearer, and that is on page 7, line 6, change corporations to the words business entities. That's a possessive. And then page 8, line 4 to 11, to make it clear, this is, we would add some additional language in here so that when we talk about a person or entity described in this subparagraph, that they hold, own, control, or otherwise have direct or indirectly acquired a beneficial ownership of equity, voting shares, and I'm adding the words membership units or other applicable ownership interests of the business entity. That way we can be clear about that. And repeat that very same thing later in the sentence so that it would be in addition to in an amount that is equal to or greater than 50% of the total equity, outstanding voting shares, or add the words membership units or other applicable ownership interests of the business entity. Then on page 9, line 20, change the words contribution, independent expenditure, or electioneering communication to the words contribution or expenditure, comma, including independent expenditure or electioneering communication. Then make some technical amendments in addition to that that are needed for clarity, consistency, and style. So with that, and I would like to defect the effective date to June 30th, 3000. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 1179 SD1 with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. On this next measure, Senate Bill 1541, I carefully studied the testimony in opposition to this measure and their reference to the existing law, HRS 19-3, subparagraph 5, that prevents voting more than once during an election. And based on legal analysis, consultation with our attorneys of the committee and our House Majority Staff Office, that this measure actually clarifies and complements the existing statute. So I think it does have merit, and I'd like to move it forward. So I'd like to pass out a House Draft 1 with some technical amendments. And that's all that I'd like to do. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 1541 with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. On this next measure, Senate Bill 1543, relating to public financing for candidates to elected office, I would like to move out a House Draft 1 on need to make some technical amendments. There's a couple of different places where that is, where they refer to subpart E. It should actually be subpart D. But I also would like to make some substantive changes to this, just in terms of the number of qualifying contributions. It is defined in here what a qualifying contribution is, and I want to make sure the members understand that the qualifying contributions have to come, they're $5, but they have to come from registered voters in the district that the candidate is running for an office in. And what I'd like to do is actually, considering the amount of money, public money, that these candidates would be qualifying for, I wanted to set a floor for the total number of qualifying contributions that should be required in the offices, and then go from there. And I chose 200 as the floor. And the reason why is I chose 1% of the 20,000 voters that are in each of our representative districts. It will take work for candidates to go out and do that, but I think there's a lot of public money that they would get once they get these qualifying contributions. So that's the floor. That's the minimum for any of these. So here's what I'm suggesting. On page 13 for the Office of State Senator, what currently is 250 qualifying contributions, I'd suggest that be 400. For Office of State Representative, it's currently 125. I suggest that is 200. For the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, it's currently 100. I recommend it's 200. On page 14, for the Office of Prosecuting Attorney of a county with a population of not less than 195,000 but not more than 499,999, it's 200. It's currently in the bill as 100. For the Office of Prosecuting Attorney of a county with population between 150,000 but not more than 194,999, it's a blank number of qualifying contributions. I'm making that 200. For Office of Prosecuting Attorney of a county with a population of less than 150,000, it's currently 63. I'm making it 200. For Office of County Counsel of a county with a population of not less than 195,000 but not more than 499,999, it's only 50. I'm saying it's 200. For Office of County Counsel of a county with a population of not less than 150,000 but not more than 194,999, it's currently in the bill at 75 qualifying contributions. It's going to be, I'm suggesting it be 200. And the Office of County Counsel of a county with a population of less than 150,000 It's currently 75, and I'm saying it's 200. So again, it's basically that it's 200 is the minimum in any office, considering they're going to get thousands of dollars in public financing and free them up to do just campaigning, which is great. But I want, there is concern among members that we want to make sure these are all legitimate candidates and that they show that legitimacy by going out and getting those qualifying contributions of that at that minimum level of 200. And I've campaigned. I know it's not easy, but this is going to make sure that they do their work. So those are my recommendations. Let's see. I'm going to keep, oh yes, I'm keeping the, we have to make some technical amendments. And then on page 20, line 17, it should read, but no more than 194,999. That was a mistake in the drafting. We need to make some technical amendments. The bill contains a blank appropriations. I'm going to keep it blank because there's different calculations about what that is. You know, the commission, I mean, we have to make that calculation and figure out what the appropriation will be able to put into this. I want everyone to understand and the members to understand, you know, we passed out the House version of the budget. It did not include any of the governor's messages. It only included the House priorities, but none of the Senate priorities. It did not include any of the appropriation bills that this committee sent to Finance Committee, nor any of the other appropriation bills that the other committees sent to Finance Committee. We do not know whether we can afford this. But this committee needs to make its decision based on the policies, not based on the financial impacts of it. That's really the coulion of the Finance Committee. I am telegraphing out there to everybody, knowing that we may not be able to afford this to the scale that the $30 million that had been initially suggested as the amount. But I think this measure has merit. I would like to move it forward. It has a defective effective date. I want to keep that in there. That's my recommendation for House Draft 1. Questions or concerns, members? Yes, Representative Ganadin.
My sincere appreciation to the organizations, academics, individuals that testified in support of this, and towards the desire to keep dark money out of politics. I think that if this is successful, you know, this has the possibility of changing the way we do campaigning here in the state of Hawaii and introducing public financing in 2026 as a real viable alternative. I think that it would be difficult for somebody like myself to get 200 people to give me $5 each, fill out a form, fill out a separate form, follow up with the state, deny support from other organizations, including unions and other groups, in order to proceed, because that's just the way campaigning you know, has been done historically here in Hawaii. So I think it's to be seen, and we might have to revisit this in future years if it doesn't work as we had hoped.
Understood. Other questions or concerns, members?
Chair, if I may.
Vice Chair Takayama, please proceed.
I share your support for the intent of the bill, which I think is very good. And but I also share concerns about the potential cost of the bill. As you noted, the Senate estimated the cost at $30 million. I know other states that have implemented this system spend much less. But I noticed that in Hawaii, you know, where this bill would cover all state and county offices, which in Hawaii's case, that means county council races in 4 counties, county prosecutors, as well as the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, which I think accounts for the much higher cost potentially in Hawaii. Also, in following up your concerns about the cost of other appropriations bills, the House, I added up, passed a total of about 140 appropriation bills passed over to the Senate, and their total cost was about $500 million. And so even though the cost of this bill, in comparison to a state budget of several $billion dollars, is relatively small, we don't have the luxury of considering it in a vacuum. So I share your support for the bill. I also share your concerns about the cost, but thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Other questions or concerns? No? If not, then recommendation move out with an HD1. Vice Chair for the vote. Please proceed.
Voting on Senate Bill 1543 SD2 with amendments. Any WRs or noes? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Moving on, Senate Bill 627 relating to campaign finance. This is the one that allows, clarifies that you can use campaign funds for child care and vital household dependent care costs under certain conditions. My recommendation is to make some technical amendments to this and pass out House Draft 1. We'll keep the clean effective date, but I would move it out with technical amendments. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 627 with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next, Senate Bill 9. On this measure, I'd like to move it out as is. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 9, SD1, passing as is. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Senate Bill 19 relating to cast ballots. My recommendation is to pass this out, House Draft 1 with technical amendments and defect the effective date. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 19 with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. And on that measure, members, I just want to make sure you knew that I had requested our Deputy Attorney General, Candace Park, to go back and take a look at this and look at the existing statute and just see if we really need it. And she kindly agreed to do that. So I appreciate that. So that's why I put in a defective effective date. Okay, moving on. Senate Bill 201. On this measure, I recommend that we amend this bill by inserting the contents of House Bill 724, which I think has got good language in it, and move it out with the House Draft 1. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 201 SD1 with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. On Senate Bill 109, my recommendation is to move this out with the House Draft 1. I would like to make the amendments in here so that we're using consistent terms between Senate Bill 109 and Senate Bill 110. For example, on page 15, line 17 to 18, instead of using stepfather of the child, it would be child's birthing parent's spouse, for example. And then on page 25, line 11 to 12, we amend the language to be, that currently reads uncle and niece, aunt and nephew. It would be a person and the child of the person's biological sibling. So what I'd like to do is to go through Senate Bill 109 and make the language in there consistent and do the same thing with the next bill. We're going to keep the defective effective date so that we can keep track of this and just make sure that it's all consistent throughout. We're also going to look at House Bill 384, which we moved out and sent over to the Senate, and then I'll work with them to try to make sure that when we go to conference on that, we'll be consistent on that bill too, so that we can start making sure we have consistency across the board on any of these measures. So with that in mind, Senate Bill 109, SD1, I propose to move out with the House Draft 1 with those amendments. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
Voting on Senate Bill 109 SD1 with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. And the last one, Senate Bill 110. Again, I'd like to move this out with House Draft 1. Make changes to the terminology in there to make sure that it's consistent with the language we're using in Senate Bill 109. I will keep the defective effective date, and with that, I'd like to move it out as an HD1. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 110 SD1 with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much for all your hard work, Vice Chair and members of the committee. There being no further business before this body, we are adjourned.